Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Marianne Petrie. This episode of Slam the Gavel is sponsored by CPS Protect Consulting Services. A child protective services case is one of the most frightening experiences for any parent. Don't face it alone. Face it with confidence with Urgent Assist by CPS Protect. You can have access to former CPS investigators to make sure you preserve your rights and protect your family. If you're facing CPS involvement and aren't sure where to turn, their child welfare consultants can help you. Visit cpsprotect.com/subscribe and enter the coupon code SLAMTHEGAVEL for 60% off your first year of Urgent Assist. And this is available in all 50 states. I have another announcement. Bradley's mother, Narcisse Golan, passed away in the fall of 2022. Bradley is autistic and needs structured routine and therapies he receives for his autism 6 days a week. However, Italy just entrusted Bradley to Italian social services. If he is ruled to go back, he will face the next 3 to 4 years in the Italian foster care system, where he can't speak or understand the language. He will then be taken away from the only family he has ever known. Please call Governor Hochul, New York State, 518-474-8390. That's Governor Hochul, 518-474-8390 to please keep Bradley here safe in these United States. Hashtag keep Bradley safe. One last announcement. Go to the site, pleasedoyourjob.com. We need 2,500 more signatures to get a case reopened. That's pleasedoyourjob.com. I have a brand new guest on. I'm happy to have my good friend Carmela Martinez on. And she's a 58-year-old living in New York State. And she was told that she breached her side of the marriage contract when she wanted to start a family. After a tirade with her ex, they both agreed to start a family. The ex would not allow her to work against her wishes once the children were born. She was always self-supporting. The boys and herself wanted for nothing, and their life looked like a postcard to the outside world. However, inside, the boys and her were subjected to the ex's demonic rage on a daily basis. And she did it until she couldn't take it anymore. It took 3 years to find the courage and strength to file for divorce. She was terrified the day he would be served. Friday of Memorial Day weekend of 2015 is when he was served, and she planned for both boys to have sleepovers. Her therapist urged her to get herself and their dog out of their home before the ex appeared. The beginning of the nightmare would then unfold. From the onset, he used the eldest as his pawn. The boys were then 12 and 9 when she filed for divorce. The school, however, suggested that she allow the eldest to live with the ex temporarily. Things had become explosive. The eldest was confused and angry. The ex was fueled that the confusion and anger. The eldest was acting out horrifically, and it was supposed to be a temporary stay, ended up being a 6-month during the arduous month after month of forensic psychiatry reports to be completed. The renowned Dr. M told her, as long as these children are minors, he will never co-parent with you. And little did Martina know what these words meant. Carmela Martinez, how are you and where are you at with your case?
Hi, Marianne. Nice to meet you finally.
Finally.
It has been a very long 8-year process, and at the 8th year, it's probably the worst that it's ever been. It feels like I'm receiving court emails every single day. I have letters coming to my post office box from the child support organization saying how much arrearage I owe. They're going to stop me from getting a passport. It's just on and on and on. It's at the worst point.
Oh, most definitely. That happened to me as well. They took away my passport when I was in the arrears. You know, how far in the arrears are you, if I may ask?
It's just over $5,000.
Oh, that's not bad. I mean, it could be worse, because I was like I was up to 17,000, I think, at one time.
That's bad.
Now, well, hey, when they take you away from your job and make your life miserable, how you just can't work. But everyone knows my story. But tell me more about like how did the school get off telling you to have the oldest stay with him temporarily?
Well, so I need to own up on my part. It was suggested to me at the end of the day, I was the one who made the decision. When I filed for divorce, the eldest was in the seventh grade, middle of the seventh grade. The youngest was in the fourth grade. And once I filed for divorce, the ex held that eldest one. It was his pawn. He polluted his mind. He manipulated him. And it was all a plan to get to where we are today. It was to get both children from me, which are both of them are court sanctioned kidnapped.
Mhm.
And now the final straw is that he is demanding I pay him child support for two children. He did
I
not allow me to work during the marriage. I am proud to say that I love my job. I'm phenomenal at it, but I make $20 an hour. He is a cash business, self employed, very, very profitable, works for the super wealthy in Bergen County, New Jersey, and he claims that he has no money. His corrupt lawyer has stated that this is the lowest that he's ever made in his life, all an attempt just to get me to pay more and more child support that I can't even support myself.
So the lawyer said this is the lowest he's gone?
The low ex's attorney said this is the least amount of money that he's ever earned.
Oh, okay, so he kinda changed his financials around.
Correct.
Yes, that's what mine did. Okay. Um, but the school suggested that the oldest stay with him temporarily?
So
This
the eldest, once X left the home, and he left on his own accord, the eldest was acting up. He was very angry, and he stopped going to school, cursing. He did get physical with both myself and the younger brother, and it got very, very bad,
Mm,
very bad. And the school suggested because it was just so hot tempered with the eldest, and I was his target.
mhm.
His father was putting horrible things and lies into his head, and I was the target. And X did tell me when I filed for divorce that he would be sure to tell both boys that it was because of me that our family broke up. Meanwhile, it was him, the multiple affairs and the silent treatment, the whole entire narcissistic abuse.
Mhm.
And the school suggested maybe, just maybe, temporarily let the eldest child go to the father just to calm things down.
Mm,
And again, at the end of the day, I'm the one who listened. And because I was frightened of my own child, he
mm,
was that angry. And the younger one was frightened of him. I allowed it temporarily.
mhm.
And then in court, X started walking over towards my side with my attorney to do what I don't know, but he didn't like what my attorney was saying. Guards had to escort him out of the court building. And at the next court hearing, my lawyer suggested to the judge that this family has to do forensic psychiatric reports. So the forensic report was done, what was supposed to be 6 weeks ended up being 6 months. And
Mm,
I called and I called and I called because the parental alienation began immediately. I
mhm.
stopped seeing my son completely. X always had a reason why I couldn't see him. I was trying to do the right thing and go through X since the child was under his care. And that blew up. So I ended up not seeing my child. And as I said, I filed, he was served in May. So it's now the summertime. Eldest child is left on his own while the father's at work and doing whatever else he's doing. And I was a teenager once too.
Mhm.
No rules. This is great. No one's home. I can do what I want. And I contacted my lawyer time after time after time. I contacted the forensic psychologist time after time, saying it's going on too long.
Right.
When is this report completed? 6 months later, it was completed. My lawyer called me at home. I heard the glee in her voice saying this is going to be a permanent. And I will never forget the scream that came out of my mouth. Permanent. My child is now being handed over to the abuser.
Mm,
Um, Little did I know how bad it would get, and it got bad so bad. I have not seen my eldest child in over 2 years. He has been so manipulated and brainwashed by X that he's questioning what the reality is, which is just heartbreaking. We both have joint custody. The eldest just lived with him. The youngest just lived with me, but we both had joint custody, meaning we're supposed to converse with one another, talk about school and medical, etc. I knew nothing about my eldest child. I continued to do the parent-teacher conferences twice a year, fall and spring. It was the only way I found out about what was happening with my child. And one of the teachers slammed her hand down on the desk and said, "You keep doing what you're doing because your children will know who the real parent is one day." And the school knew. The school knew. They knew what was going on. I have been told through the grapevine that they are afraid of a lawsuit from X, and it's why they turn a blind eye to it. But at what point do they take responsibility? 7th grade went into 8th grade, 8th grade went into high school, and now the distance is getting even further between my eldest and I. I do remember one of the times that he came over to my apartment and the younger one's apartment. The younger one came over to hug me. We were always very, very close, and I could see out of the side of my eye the lost look in my eldest's face. Such a look of confusion, like, what I'm seeing is not what I'm being told about her. That is horrific. That is absolutely horrific. Every time that we start to get a little bit closer, something happens, X finds out about it and splits us up even more. He's been with the father since he was 12 and a half. I have to stop and think sometimes how old he is because he hasn't been in my life for so long. He will be 21 in the next 2 weeks, and my heart is forever shattered. Forever shattered. But this wasn't bad enough. Just like your book says, taking the kids was not enough, because now X is manipulating the younger one. And I was at pretty vulnerable stage. Both of my parents got sick with cancer. I took family leave to care for both of them, and put on that brave face to take care of them. And I truly believe X used that to his advantage. And then, no coincidence here, May 2 years ago, it was Memorial Weekend again, the youngest came to me, hugged me and said, "Mom, I'm seeing Dad." And that was nothing out of the ordinary for me because we lived in the same condo complex. I know, crazy, but I had to find a new rental because my former landlord kept raising the rent. And this landlord was the only one who would allow dogs. And I had a dog at the time. So again, nothing out of the ordinary. I never wanted, and I was very vocal about that, I never wanted a court document to dictate when the child could see his father or his brother. It just wasn't natural to me. I was not going to stoop to X's level. Although I was not seeing the older child and he wasn't in my life, he was still open to receiving emails. And what I did was send him Amazon memories so that he wouldn't forget his mama or the happy times that we used to have. And we did have many, many happy times. X was never involved with the boys and I. It was just the boys and I. And the younger one hasn't returned. 2.5 years later, he still hasn't returned because the corrupt lawyers stole, and I use the word stole, $175,000 of mine, and that was from the sale of 2 marital houses. They had to keep it in escrow, they said, because if they gave me my portion, I would never see X's portion. He was formerly married, was in jail for not paying his first wife child support, so he had a history here. I trusted the court system. I trusted the court system. And years later, I have zero trust in them. What has happened to my boys and I, and to millions of us, I shake my head in disbelief. I do not hate X. I do not love him. I feel nothing towards him. I just want this nightmare to end. My children are suffering. I'm a big girl. I've come a long way. I found that self-love that I never had. And it's been quite the journey, but I'm at a really good point in my life. I'm an adult. I can seek yoga. I can seek, I'm now doing equine therapy. I'm very immersed in the domestic violence organization doing their support groups. I read your books, Marianne. I research what narcissism is all about and parental alienation. And I still in 2023 cannot believe how many millions of us are suffering. I was told that the moms are always favored. And I don't know how it is anywhere else, but in New York State, it's whoever has the money is the winner. If you want to call them that, the winner. There are no winners here, including X. He has such hatred towards me for filing for divorce that he's even putting his children, our children, in the middle of it. So the eldest, when he first went to him at 12 and a half, he was court ordered to see a therapist. And that therapist came back saying, and I quote, he had severe anxiety and depression. And I knew what that meant because when I was married to X, that's exactly how I was. Again, was alienated from that child, had no say in anything. I filed petition after petition after petition pro se because after the lawyers took $175,000 of mine, I had no more money left. So I filed pro se and I made mistakes, but I was determined. I have a voice today. And so I refiled another petition until I got it correct. Mm-hmm. And we were in court and I was representing myself. And it was so black and white with all the evidence that had occurred and what had occurred with the older child and I. But again, it's the one who has money wins. Mm-hmm. And X has a very high-powered attorney that I can't imagine the amount of money that he's spending on it, which is tragic in itself. Mm-hmm. That's the boy's money.
Right.
And no decision was made. We were told to come back months and months and months later. So as the months and months and months later and court appearances keep happening, the child is getting older. The younger child is getting older. At this point now, he's 17. I don't even know who this child is anymore. He's become a very angry, withdrawn. He must have lost 35, 40 pounds when he first left me. It was just not a good situation. I didn't know who he was anymore. He had such anger towards me. And I knew at that point the manipulation, the brainwashing by X had occurred in such a short period of time.
And a lot of people don't realize that this brainwashing, this alienation can happen almost overnight.
And what shocked me so much was my heart always went out towards the eldest because he was at such a vulnerable age to begin with at 12. On top of that, dealing with a very contentious divorce between the parents. I'm not a holy angel here, but I refuse to talk badly about their father. It had nothing to do with their father. It was between the father and I. Mm-hmm. And although I took the stand, it's their father. It has nothing to do with them. The father took the opposite stand and fueled those children with how bad and evil I was. He went so far as to say to the eldest, your mother threw you away. When the reality is, after that 6-month forensic report was finally done, it came back that X had oppositional defiant disorder. That's blaring right there. It's blaring right there. Mm-hmm. That renowned forensic psychologist said to me, as long as these two boys are minors, X will never co-parent with you. Mm-hmm. So I ask, why am I here where I am today? And why are my children where they are today? And I have such hard, concrete evidence, but it continues. The nightmare continues.
So the judge did not look at any of your evidence.
So X and being immersed with the domestic violence organization, they see this on a daily basis. Lawyers taking advantage of abused women, especially when they know that the children are involved. that they have found that women spend every dime that they have and then some, beg, borrow, and steal, because their children are at stake. And I've racked up my credit cards,
Mhm.
and I am now paying child support to X. I had no choice but to get a lawyer, because he was coming after me for the child support. Again, as this high-powered attorney, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. So I reached out to a few friends, and they suggested one. I gave a down payment of a few $1,000s to the attorney, and he said, "You don't have to give me any more after this." And he's done very, very little at this point. He doesn't even show up to court appearances. The child support judge ruled by default, because my attorney did not show up to the court appearance, that I owed child support. And that was twice that he did not show up. So I've jumped off the merry-go-round. It's a court circus. It's a disgrace. The children's attorneys should be ashamed of themselves.
Mhm.
When I first filed petitions 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, the youngest attorney, who I've had experience with before because she was the youngest child's attorney during the divorce, she was so adamant that I hand over the youngest birth certificate, social security card, bank statements, and I had the courage to say to the judge, and this was virtually because it was during COVID, I said, if she's so concerned about the child, she would be concerned that he's missing so many days of school, that he's not seeing his mother on a regular basis when we used to be so close,
Mhm.
that he has turned into a child that I don't even know who he is anymore. And the judge said that I had to turn over the social security card. So I did that. I made a copy, and supposedly that was fine. But this is just insanity. Now,
Mhm.
the younger child knows. The older one, I should back up, the eldest got his ticket to freedom. He went off to college. And I hear through the grapevine that he's doing very well. And I also heard that he studied abroad this past summer, which I literally shed tears and tears over that he had that experience. But how does a parent know that their own child is not out of the country for months at a time? And I found this out through another source. It's I keep calling it the kangaroo court system.
Mhm.
We are at this point. I have another court appearance virtually in front of the child support this coming Wednesday for a willfulness, because X and his attorney filed a petition stating that I willfully was not paying child support. In fact, a few weeks ago, we had a virtual court appearance, and that judge screamed at me and said, "Get a job and pay child support." And my attorney said, "Judge, this situation is so bad. We're still in family court. The situation is so, so bad." And then she screamed at me and she said, "If X wants you in jail, I will put you there." And the panic that set into me almost paralyzed me. And I started writing check after check. They are now garnishing my paycheck. And I still don't have either child in my life. The younger child did find out that his father was coming after me for child support. And sadly, the child knows. He now knows what his father is,
Mhm.
that he was being used to get back at me. He did say that he wanted to come back and live with me. Once X found out about that, he said to him, "Give me your car keys and give me your phone," that he was cutting him off financially. And this is how he holds the boys in check,
Mhm. Mhm.
the financial. So I have no trust in the legal system
Mhm.
whatsoever. I do believe this is generational. X had a father who did the same thing to his mother. And I continue on my path of self love
Mhm.
I've been told time and time again that my children need a sane parent to come to, someone who's safe and healthy, and I miss them terribly. And they're the last faces that I see when I go to sleep at night because I have pictures of them at my bedside, and the first faces I wake up to. Um, it's an ongoing battle.
Mhm.
It's an ongoing battle.
Uh, do you want to say your child support judge's name? Because New York State is just a big mess with a lot of these judges.
I would rather not at this time since we're still actively in front of her.
Mhm.
I will say, regarding the divorce situation, my first attorney did so many injustices. I do believe that she's part of the reason why the eldest ended up with the father. She told me point blank that she was personal friends with the forensic psychologist. She also told me that she had dinner with the forensic psychologist to literally, quote, discuss our case. It sounded strange to me because I received in capital letters on court paperwork signed off by the judge, no attorney was to be in touch with this forensic psychologist.
Hmm.
Some of these lawyers, these corrupt lawyers, they're above the law.
Oh,
And
yes.
so when she said that she had dinner to discuss our case, I didn't know what to think. But I do know months later, the eldest child came into the marital home to take his bedroom furniture to his father's. And I will never forget the look on his face as he's standing upstairs and I'm downstairs. And he looked at me with a little boy face and said, "Mom, does this mean I can never come home to you?"
Mm.
He slept in my home once in 8 years. Once. Um, I don't know what else to say other than it is just the justice system made a situation a million times worse, a million times worse. That first lawyer, and I will say her name because I'm all about justice. It's Michelle Ellerin. She had her own office in Middletown, New York. I chose her because I was told she was cutthroat.
Mhm.
And I knew, so I thought, what I was dealing with X. He loved power and money, power and money. And I thought this was a sure thing that I
Mhm.
could get on with my life and the children would be with me. They would see their father on a regular basis. And that's not how it turned out at all. There were so many injustices done, so many. The same lawyer even told me to go take a credit card out using X's name and information. People to this day say to me, "And you did it?" Why would I not? Why would I not? This is my lawyer who I paid, who I trusted. And X was not giving us money. I had a 4,000 square foot home that I had to fuel, and I had 2 children to feed and put gas in the car to get them back and forth to school. Why
Mhm.
would I not listen to her?
Mhm.
And I was using it for emergencies. And X found out about it. And the lawyer put up her hands and said, I don't know why she did that. Little did she know that I kept an email communication chain between her paralegal and I stating for me to do that at her direction.
Mhm.
Well, I had had enough. I had had enough. Um, she reached out to the judge in the end saying that I was not cooperating. She filled out a co-parent plan and a financial plan so that this divorce could end. It was pages and pages and pages. I think 52 pages I had heard. And I had read letters all over it saying, this is what I need to talk to her about. Well, she sent it to me via email, and then she went on vacation for 2 weeks. She sent it to opposing's attorney, who then in turn went on vacation. And the next thing I know, I'm receiving a letter in the mail from court saying, your trial date is set for whatever date that was. And I called her and I said, what are you talking about? We have not even done forensic accounting. And at that point, she said, She said, find yourself a new lawyer. This was, I believe it was 10 days at that point before trial was to begin. What
They
lawyer is going to pick this up?
they all do this.
And with what money?
Mm.
So she sent the judge a horrific letter about me not being cooperative, how difficult, and I had it. I got strength. I had it. We all know it's a no-no to send the judge anything unless you send all parties. But
Right.
I sent the judge and her chambers a letter with the facts.
Mhm.
And she called us into court and she asked me, was the relationship broken? And I said yes. So she gave me, I think, 6 weeks to find a new attorney, which I did, but that cost more money. And then I found the most corrupt, James Sexton in Rockland County. He took on my case. It should have been almost over and done with. Remember, we were going to trial to decide on the to decide on the financials regarding the marriage and child custody and child support. It was done. It was this much being done.
Mhm.
And he wanted to milk me for even more money. And he ended up being another $55,000. What ended up happening was the eldest remained with the father, the youngest remained with me. We had joint custody. We were court ordered to do parenting classes. I did mine. I know X didn't do his. It's just been back and forth, back and forth. Anytime X can bring me into court, that's what he does. He has such fine details on what's happening, but it's because he's doing it all and he's saying, I'm doing it. My therapist said it's called projection. He's throwing his entire being onto me.
Mhm.
So this nightmare continues. We are due back in court in March. The youngest will be 18 at the end of February. It's a circus. What are we going back to court for? What are we going back to court for? I've made peace in my heart that X has the 2 children. I need to keep taking care of me. So again, in the future, and I pray that they do both come back to me, that they have a sane, safe, healthy parent to come to. And both have said their father is no role model.
When did they say that? Like, what ages did they say that?
The eldest was in senior year of high school, because I remember he and I started getting closer. And I would start being open with him about what the situation was. And I wanted to start planting seeds in him. These are the facts.
Mhm.
Or this is my side. There's always 3 sides to every story. And we started getting closer and had many a conversation, just him and I. Before that, he did not feel comfortable just sitting in the same room with me. He always had to have his brother there. Or we had to be out in public somewhere. Tragic. And
Mhm.
this is coming from the ex who did not want children, who said, I breached my side of the marriage contract when I wanted to start a family. He's a narcissist. Again, I have no hate towards him. He's just a very, very sick person. But the court needs to step up and do their job. And hearing many of your podcasts, Marianne, and reading your books, I understand. I may not agree with it, but I understand why there are some parents who commit suicide on the court steps. I understand. And that's tragic.
Mhm.
That is tragic.
And also, you're the mother of his children, and this is how he treats the mother of his children. And there's also, good dads out there that, this is how these ex-wives treat the father of their children.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of personality disorders, and I don't know why these judges don't recognize that and stop the 3-ring circus.
I believe it's because money makes the court go around
Mhm.
and they keep dragging it. This is almost 3 years later regarding my younger just walking out saying he was going to go see his dad. And that was planned because he took none of his possessions. And that child, the weight on his shoulders, I can't imagine. I can't imagine what he's going through. He now understands, he saw it for himself, who X is, who his father is, and that he was used as the pawn to get money that I don't have. If I had it, I would have no issue with it, that I don't have. It's tragic. It's so tragic.
It's when that oldest one, I think, was at the top of the stairs and made that comment, did you reply back? Or
If I recall correctly, I just looked at his face and he just looked like just such a little boy. He was 12 at that point, which is still little, but I saw the sadness in his face. And I probably said, of course, sweetheart. I did say, actually, the door is always open for you.
oh, good.
Any door I'm at is always open for you. But again, I was a teenager once too, and you start getting freedom. I thought I was a pretty lax parent comparatively, as parents speak to one another. You go to school, you do your homework. I'm taking a Sunday mass, basic stuff.
Yeah.
And X went against every single thing that I said. Anything I said, he would go against that and scream in front of the children. And knowing me that I would back down, cower, because I didn't want the children involved. So we had X built us a mansion, and it belonged on a magazine, and it was beautiful. But I realized when I got out that it was in the middle of the woods on 6 acres on a private dirt road, that no one, friends, family, did not want to come down because the road was in such horrific condition. We were isolated.
Mm-hmm.
We had a 1,000-foot driveway. That during, I learned to hate winter because we were the highest house on the mountain. We were the biggest house on the road. The children and I wanted for nothing, but it was a living hell in that house within those 4 walls, a living hell.
And you had said that his father had done this to his mother.
Correct.
So this is all generational, obviously.
Absolutely.
And in Dr. Mark Roseman's book, Family Ties, that this will affect 6 generations now.
I believe it. I do believe it. One of the reasons why I finally got the courage to file for divorce, I have always had therapy in my adult life. And my therapist at the time said, your boys will end up just like him. And that terrified me.
Mm-hmm.
That terrified me, that I would give birth to a child who would abuse any woman in their life. That terrified me.
Mm-hmm.
I also want to say, Catholic background, went to Catholic schools when I was younger, and I had difficulty in filing for divorce. It was part of the delay. I sought out my favorite priest at the time at the local Catholic church, and he said, and it still remains so powerful to me, it is your duty and responsibility to yourself and to your children to get out of this marriage.
Mm-hmm.
It was just very powerful words for me.
Oh,
Catholic Church did not believe in divorce.
right. Well, he was looking out for you.
Oh, 100%. 100%. Part of the delay, that 3-year process, also was, it got drilled into me every day, day after day after day, that I needed X for everything. Everything. It got so bad that I actually couldn't even think for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Now, years later, I see that's not normal. When standing in his office at home, he's standing right next to me, practically on top of me, telling me to where to sign on the tax documents. I found out that he had a business in Canada all those years, and I had no idea. It's narcissism. It's sick.
Mm-hmm.
It's and I know X is truly troubled. As I said, he was formerly married and has 2 adult children, was never involved in their life when they were younger. Now that the hard work is done, now he's, part of their life, as far as I know. But at the time, his first wife asked him to sign away his rights as a parent because he was never involved and he wasn't paying her child support. And he ended up in jail for not paying her child support, and then supposedly turned his life around. And they tacked on $20 a week. So from $150 to $170 per week. He did not yet have his own building business, carpentry business, but he was working on the side. He was doing pretty well. And he verbally told me many times, I will always take care of those children because of what happened. He knew in his heart what happened, but he just kept fueling it and fueling it and fueling it. I also know when I was married to X, his oldest from a previous marriage was getting married. And we were at the Jersey Shore at the church. And I remember my former mother-in-law saying out loud that she wanted X to walk her down the aisle. Nothing out of the ordinary to me. That's one of her sons.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And X screamed in church, tell that C word, can't even repeat it, tell that C word, I'm not doing it. And I looked in horror at him saying, how do you speak like this? Not only about your mother, but we're in church.
Oh.
He ended up doing it. He ended up walking her down the aisle, as he should have done to begin with. But over the years, being with him was very demeaning towards women, wouldn't let me work, like I said. There was a time when the youngest actually was in kindergarten all day. And I loved and I cherished being a mother, but I also needed to get out of those four walls. We had been so secluded. And I approached him, asking him. Years later, I say to myself, I'm asking him, which is ludicrous in itself. Could I please get a part-time job?
Mm-hmm.
And he flew off the handle, came inches to my face, dug in his pocket, whipped out a bunch of fresh $100 bills, threw it in my face, and said, this is your job. The boys in this house is your job. I was told by the domestic violence organization I was lucky I got out.
Mm-hmm.
Years later, I understand what that means. Years later, they say they see it often. The abuse happens both to women and to men. I get it. I've listened to many of your podcasts and I've read your books. It happens to men and women. There's no discrimination here. How are these innocent children in the middle of this insanity? Insanity. So correct, as your book stated, taking the children was not enough. Now coming after me for child support and continuing to drag me through the court system. I'm exhausted, and that's exactly what they want. They want that mental, physical exhaustion to take place.
Are you representing yourself now?
I still have that attorney, who I gave one lump sum to. He said I wouldn't have to pay him anything after. But he either shows up or he doesn't. I don't know. He has no communication with me. Since the youngest child has been with the father, it's a repeat pattern. It's a repeat pattern. Last year he missed, I think it was 68 school days. The eldest, when he was a sophomore in high school, missed 70 something school days. PINS has been involved. The judge ordered X to go to file a PINS petition on the eldest child because he would not go to school. It's not the kid's fault.
What is a PINS? What is that?
Persons in need of supervision. Persons in need of supervision.
Huh.
When I brought the evidence to court through my attorney at the time, a few years ago, that he was missing so much school and he was failing, and I had no relationship with him, on the spot, that judge ordered X to go file a PINS petition. That in itself was a joke. I got months later an email from X, and I could hear the chuckle in his voice saying, they closed the case. They told me I was a great parent. Imagine that, with his 5 question marks. I hold the school responsible. because there are truancy laws.
Mhm.
But again, I'm told by several people, they're afraid of getting a lawsuit from X. He's got endless amount of money, endless.
But they're mandated reporters and they're not doing their job.
That is correct. That is correct. I know for the younger one, when he had missed so much school last year, a CPS case was open by an unknown source. A second source came up and filed another complaint through the CPS about the same child, the younger one. I got a letter months later saying the case was closed. Case was closed.
Sounds like they were paid off.
I've been asked too many times by people who X is and what does he do for a living. And that statement right there speaks volumes. He just, as far as I know, purchased his 5th brand new car, a brand new car for each child, which I'm all for. God bless.
Mhm.
Let the children benefit from the finances of the father. But then to threaten their car keys to take them away if they don't stay in line and do as what they're told. And part of that is not to have a relationship with their mother. 9 acres of land, building them. I mean, the list goes on and on.
And
I'm legit.
right, and the thing is, they've been brainwashed, the
Yep.
Stockholm syndrome has set in, and, hopefully with the oldest one going overseas and hopefully being able to clear his head even, that might help.
I was when the eldest child got to be a senior, still very angry. He did not want to go to college. And this child, when he was born, I mean, he was born brilliant. I mean, he is just brilliant. And that broke my heart. But we started getting closer and closer. And I had many a conversation with him, and he was open to listening.
Mhm.
Um,
How
I
old
encourage.
how old was he at that time when
So Ethan, the eldest, we kept him back a year when he was in preschool, just due to the maturity level. So he was 17 at that time. No, sorry, 18. 18 at that time in senior. And he allowed me to buy his cap and gown for high school graduation. He allowed me to sign him up for pictures. He didn't have a comb, supposedly. I brought a comb with me when I picked him up in the car to bring him to the school to get his high school photos. And this child allowed me to comb his hair.
Oh.
He allowed me to comb his hair. He allowed me to take him clothing shopping so we could get him a nice outfit for the pictures. And he reached out to me and asked me, did I know any college recruiters? And I got that going. As I said, he ended up going to college. Supposedly he's doing very well. The rare occasion I speak to him, he says he never wants to come back to this location.
Mhm.
My children have their own journey. I know this. But none of this should have happened. None
Right,
of it.
right.
I do know the child, the eldest, weeks away from graduation. We didn't get tickets. We, just were allowed to go. I think the graduating class was 350, 360, something like that. And the night before the graduation, eldest reached out to me by phone and by text saying, you're uninvited and unwelcome to come to my graduation. We all know that wasn't coming from him. It was coming from X. And I thought for a half a second not to go. But then I realized I'm going and I deserve to go.
Mhm.
I was the parent, the only parent, as those children were being raised. X didn't want the children. And I showed up. And after the ceremony, I went up to my eldest to give him a hug on the field. He saw me and did such a quick exit from there. In my opinion, strictly my opinion, he was punished.
Mhm.
He was punished financially because his mom showed up to the graduation. It's just a very sick, sick situation.
It's so sad. People say to me, well, why did you marry this guy? And it's like, well, we didn't see the red flags. We didn't know what a personality disorder was. Even though there were red flags as we were dating, I didn't have a counselor at the time to say, hey, this happened. What do you think of this? There was no guidance. We didn't know what a personality disorder was how many years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. And
Correct.
now we're finding out. And we're both here to educate a lot of people on personality disorders. And
And it's part of my story was X is so good at what he does, manipulating and brainwashing. To the outside world, he looks perfect. To the outside world, he looks perfect. Meanwhile, the children and I have suffered at his hands. It's now going on the 11th year. It took me 3 years to file for divorce, and I remember towards the end when we were still living together, it was the silent treatment for weeks, months on end. And I say stupidly, but what did I know at the time? He would scream to me when he felt like talking to me, I have one question and one question only. And I foolishly said, what's that? So excited that he was talking to me. And he said, what the F are you going to do about it? Thinking that he had crushed me down so hard that I would not file for divorce. And it did take me a while to do it, but I did it. And I am incredibly proud of myself. But I feel so bad for my children. I feel so bad for my children. Part of me having a voice today is speaking to you and doing this podcast. I will be perfectly honest. You had invited me to do this when we first met, maybe 2 years ago, and I was petrified of X and petrified of the court system on if they found out I was doing this and having a voice, what would happen. I'm still nervous that something might happen, but I have a voice today. And I owe it to others who are going through the same situation or who is living with a narcissist, whether they have children or not, but most especially if they have children, to tell my story. And all of our stories are the same. It's different states, it's different ages of the kids, but they're all the same. And how does this go on? I don't understand.
well, I think it goes on because these judges are favoring the wealthy parent. They can identify with the personality disorder. They can, the man or woman may be wearing, a lavish suit, and maybe that, the judge can identify with that. We're just saying, but the thing is, like you said, this all revolves around money and the Title IV-D funding, because on every dollar paid in child support, the state takes that whatever amount, because each state is different, and it goes into different things, but it also goes into the judicial retirement funds. Okay, so for this female judge to threaten you with jail actually is unconstitutional because debtor's prison was dissolved in 1833. So that's unconstitutional. And for her to say, if your ex wants you in jail, that's where I'm going to send you. Okay, so obviously they must have a relationship. That is disgusting. Shame on her. And to think that she's a woman, and I don't want to sound biased, but but like you would think a woman judge would like look into this deeper and look at the evidence of what happened in your case and how it evolved. And these judges are not doing that. And I just don't know how a female judge can treat another woman like this. Like, I don't know how a male judge can treat a father like this. But I've seen female judges treat fathers just as crappy as they are mothers. So
It's insanity. It's
right.
absolute insanity, and it is a circus. I know in 2018, X took me back to court again for custody of the younger child now. And we were in front of, and I quote, one of the worst family court judges. Should I say her name?
Oh, why not?
Judge Courier Woods. Anytime her name is mentioned in our area, people cringe, literally. People cringe. Her story is that she had a child who got hit by a car and she was never the same again, which my heart goes out to her.
Uh-huh.
But I have heard that even lawyers are petitioning for her to get off the bench. I have been told that she rules in the favor of the fathers always, no matter what. No matter what.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what happened in our case. The child was, let me say, in 2018, 14 maybe at that time, if my math is correct. And in New York State, a child can be 12 and decide where they want to live, which is insanity in itself.
Right.
Because we as adults, if we're not understanding these personality disorders and the broken, corrupt judicial system, how can a child make that decision? How can a child make that decision? So at that time, I believe he was 14, 15. He had that horrific lawyer. Again, we're still in court, so I don't want to use her name, but she is a disgrace.
Mm-hmm.
The one who was so busy trying to get me to send a Social Security, a birth certificate, and a bank statement instead of making sure the child's in school.
Right.
It's just she spoke to the child. She was his attorney, and he told her that he wanted to remain with me.
Mm-hmm.
My punishment, and it was a punishment by that Judge Courier Woods, who should be off the bench. My punishment was to have my younger son be with the father the entire summer. I didn't get to see him. They're there to keep you in line and do as they tell you. They are all narcissists also, at least the people that I've had experience with.
Same.
You know, I can go on and on. Years later, it's still a trigger. It's still traumatic for me. I often say, I don't turn around anymore when I hear a child say mom, because I know that's not for me.
Mm-hmm.
I know that mom voice is not for me.
Mm-hmm.
I love my children, and I may not be the best parent in the world, but I want what's best for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I so believe in my heart that both children know. They know who their father is, but they're petrified of him too, because they've seen what X has done to their mother, what he can continue to do because he has so much money to now destroy me financially. His last words to me were, "I will be sure to put you in the effing street." And
well, you know, I think he'll be in for a rude awakening, and it's a big mistake for any judge to lock up a parent for being unable to pay child support. As I said, it's unconstitutional, but what happens with the kids, the judges have to look at what happens to the kids, because when I was in jail, but on the building, it said prison, and I was in the main population where dad had told them I'd be knitting and playing tennis with Martha Stewart, right? But it caused so much anger in the kids to the point where my eldest, whipped his cell phone at his father. The father whipped a full water bottle at him and took him by the back of the neck. So there was an altercation in that home when I was taken away and locked up. So these judges have to look at what this will do to the entire family. And with the adverse childhood, the ACEs experiences, adverse childhood experiences, one of the question is, have you ever had a parent in jail or prison? And that increases the ACEs scores.
I firmly believe that. I do firmly believe it. And the judges, in my opinion, we're a number. We're a dollar bill to them. They don't care. This is absolute insanity that I'm still in this situation. As far as I'm concerned, X is in contempt. He went against the child custody order.
Mhm.
I'm parental custodian. I'm parental custodian. Teachers still reach out to me, even though they should be reaching out to him, because he doesn't care. He doesn't care.
And if they're truant, why aren't they reaching out to the police?
This is why the healthier and the more research I did, I started to get a voice. I allowed, and I have to be very verbal about that for myself and to others, I allowed X to put me in that position. I allowed it. And he brainwashed me.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You know, he tells you what to do and you do it, or else. Or else. My punishment for filing for divorce, I had both children at the local supermarket and I had their snacks up there. And yes, I had a pack of razors for myself, and my card was denied. I thought nothing of it because I was so naive. I pull out another card as both children are watching, and it's denied. I realized at that point, he cut me off financially.
Mm-hmm.
He cut me off financially. I had 2 children to feed. He said he was doing the best he could. I blame the court system. I blame the corrupt lawyers, and I'm sure there are many good ones, but I certainly haven't come across any. I blame the school system. Why? And I've asked you in the 2 years that I've known you, do you think things will change? I can't believe they're still going on. I personally in this area know 2 other families that are going through the exact same thing. I've approached the schools and I said, you need to educate these children from when they come into this school building about personality disorders.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You need to educate them about what the real world is about, including with their own parents. It falls on a deaf ear. The school system in our area, they're more focused on the kids who are winning the awards and the scholarships. And I was told by one of the guidance counselors years ago, you're correct. Your child fell through the system, because I was not leaving that room until they fessed up to that. And I applaud her for admitting that, but that is a disgrace. Mm-hmm. That is a disgrace. Your child fell through the system. Who do these children trust? Can't trust your parents. You can't trust the legal system. You can't trust school. Who can you trust? Mm-hmm.
I totally get it. And I'm so glad I had you on. If people want to reach you with any questions, do you want them to come through me, or do you want to give your email, or where can they find you?
Sure. My email is terrific. It's Carmela Martinez 085 @gmail.com. Marianne, I want to end with this, if I may, mm-hmm. that 2 years ago, when 2.5 years ago, when the younger child gave me a hug and said he was seeing his father, I filed petitions with the court system to get the forensic report that clearly stated in there X had oppositional defiant disorder. and that he would not co-parent with me. And we were court ordered to pay $10,500 for that report. That should have been done in 6 weeks, and it took 6 months. And I lost a child because of it. And he lost his childhood and his mother because of it. And his brother. How do you separate two brothers? That's sick in itself. That is sick in itself. But the court shot me down because the corrupt lawyers have too much power on their hands. And I was pro se, but I had the child's attorney and I had ex's attorney saying it's useless. It was done years ago. So I was shot down. There's concrete evidence in there. After paying $10,500, I don't have access to that. And I understand, because I have to tell you, it was pretty bad, that report. And also to protect the children's identity, I understand why they can't release it publicly, but send it to the current judge. Send it to the current judge. I don't know who to believe or what to, quite frankly, I don't believe the legal system at all, because I was told by someone through the domestic violence organization that I'm entitled to have access to that forensic report. I'm exhausted. I'm absolutely exhausted.
I'm so
I
sorry.
appreciate you having me on your show, Marianne. I have a voice today, and if I've helped anyone or can help anyone, sign me up. I so appreciate you being all of our voices and having the strength and the courage to do what some of us can't do or aren't able to do.
Well, I'd like to have you back on with updates of your case.
I'd love that. Thank you.
Oh, most definitely. But don't jump off. Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these family courtrooms that in turn perpetuate parental alienation. I am your host, Marianne Petrie, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth, and the recently released Raised by These Wolves, How Family and Federal Courts Are Failing Our Children. You can find me on Spotify, YouTube, Apple iTunes, Anchor FM, iHeartRadio, and feel free to donate to buy me a coffee to help keep this podcast going. And I thank you, Carmela Martinez. I totally thank you.
Thank you, Marianne.